Hello, I am Lewis, and I am gonna do a speed draw while watching a cartoon conspiracy video.
When there's trouble, you know who to call. Cartoon Conspiracy. Well, actually, the correct answer would usually be Teen Titans. But today on Cartoon
Wait, never mind. This isn't gonna be a speed draw. This is just gonna be me drawing for a while.
Conspiracy, we're going to be stepping into it. Teen Titans was a show that aired on Cartoon Network and the WB from 2003 until 2006. The show centered around these superpowered teens dealing with the adult responsibilities of being a superhero, among, of course, crushes and puberty. In 2013, the Teen Titans shaped hole in our hearts was filled by Teen Titans Go. Instead of stopping bad guys on the run, the show focuses more on what happens in between saving the world. With a crazy cute new art style and slapstick comedy, some believe that this could be the working of Beast Boy. So what if Teen Titans Go all takes place within the realm of Beast Boy's mind? In the original series, Beast Boy was the most immature member of the Teen Titans gang.
It's called telepathy. Follow me.
It's called telepathy.
Often serving as the lovable comic relief. So if Teen Titans Go was really told through Beast Boy's eyes, it would make sense that their adventures would become more crazy and random. So let's take a look at the differences between the characters in both shows. In the original Teen Titans, Robin is the calm and confident leader of the gang. But in Teen Titans Go, he's a lot wackier and is not so shy about his feelings with Starfire. He's actually sort of head over heels obsessed with her. Raven, who is always cool, composed, and slightly dark and brooding, is definitely more driven by her emotions in Teen Titans Go. So these crazy caricatures of our original characters do make a lot of sense if we assume they've been Beast Boyified, meaning they're all loud and energetic, just like him. And the overall energy of the show is just very wacky. Beast Boy's narrations would also explain Raven's crush on him, as well as Tara's growing affections for him. While Beast Boy and Tara did have something going on in the original series, Raven never really had any romantic inclination toward him.
You are such a cool bag.
If the episodes of Teen Titans Go are all spun from Beast Boy's imagination, of course, two of the coolest ladies in the show would vie for his affection. So could it really be true that all of Teen Titans Go is told through the perspective of Beast Boy? This conspiracy is actually a really creative way to explain the connection between Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go. Tonally, Teen Titans Go really does match up with the personality of Beast Boy. There are actually a couple episodes of Teen Titans Go that follow the canon plot of Teen Titans. For example, the Teen Titans episode Nevermore, in which the gang learns about Raven's demonic father, Trigon, and have to travel to another dimension to defeat him and save Raven. But when the gang first meets Trigon in the Teen Titans Go episode Dog Hand, it's a much lighter tone overall with jokes and gags between the gang and Raven's demon father. Teen Titans Go also has practically no continuity between the episodes. Like, characters will die or be sucked into vortexes in one episode and then be perfectly fine in the next. Also, the art style in Teen Titans Go is drastically different than Teen Titans. The adorable chibi characters almost look like kids' drawings. Like maybe Beast Boy is making his own comic book about his friend's adventures. Honestly, I think this is a really awesome explanation for the disconnect between Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go. So on the plausibility meter, I give the Teen Titans Go conspiracy 4 Titan Towers out of 5. Miguel Cloud said, "I swear if this is real, the show would be 10 times better." It isn't necessarily unreal, so let's just pretend that it was real. Does that count? Sophie Tala said, "I can refute that right here and now." In an interview with the creators of Teen Titans Go, one said they'd only seen 2 episodes of the original series and the other hadn't seen any. I actually didn't know that, and it definitely changes my view of the conspiracy and the show. Blisker Guy 125 wrote, "I find it funny how your last theory was about Garfield, and Beast Boy's real name is Garfield U0001F602. And Project Echo Shadow replied, "Maybe that's part of the real cartoon conspiracy." Who's to say that there's a real conspiracy behind cartoon conspiracy, am I right? If you guys have any suggestions for conspiracies you'd like us to cover, send us an email or even make a video and we might feature it.
Comixology is Amazon's premier digital
It's no secret that I am a cartoon fanatic, but I am also a Walt Disney aficionado. Seriously, I've read every book ever published about him. I've seen every documentary. I even go to Disneyland at least once a week. I don't want to brag or anything, but I probably know everything there is to know about Walter Elias Disney. So it's not unknown that this American legend has a pretty long list of crazy conspiracies about him. Like the whereabouts of his maybe frozen body parts and his ties to, like, say, the Illuminati. But this particular conspiracy we're going to cover today actually took me by surprise. Could Walt Disney actually be an FBI informant? Okay, Walt Disney, a secret agent for a government organization? Can you imagine comparing Walt Disney to, say, James Bond or even Burt Macklin? Well, this conspiracy proposes that Walt Disney was collecting information and reporting it back to the FBI. And the information could be about any of the famous and powerful people Disney was on good terms with all over the world. But how could Walt Disney, the pioneer of American animation, a man who preached in believing in your dreams, how could he be secretly spying for the FBI? Well, in 1994, Mark Elliott published a book called Walt Disney, Hollywood's Dark Prince. It explored the darker side of this esteemed creator and made some pretty wild accusations. But one point in particular Elliott made caught a good deal of attention. It is, of course, the theory we are currently exploring. The author declared that from 1940 to his death in 1966, Walt Disney worked alongside the FBI as a secret informer. And believe it or not, there are actually FBI documents to back this up. Some of these documents can be found on the FBI website under his full name, Walter Elias Disney. There are over 570 pages, but the majority of them have been redacted, which of course Elliott claims to be suspicious. He believes that the Disney family, along with the FBI, could be hiding something from us. Of the pages that are still left, we've learned that Walt volunteered his park, Disneyland, for the FBI to use however they find necessary, and that relationship was mutually beneficial. And there's also a proposal for the FBI to provide their offices to Disney to shoot portions of the Mickey Mouse Club. Now remember, this was post-World War II in the US, so one of the major activities of the FBI was combating communist threats. It's actually well documented that Walt Disney was staunchly against communism and did whatever he could to oppose it. Around this time, the Second Red Scare was in its peak, and Senator Joseph McCarthy had instilled a fear of communists hiding amongst us and encouraged people to turn in those they were suspicious of. This fear created the Hollywood blacklist. Many creative professionals were forced out of Hollywood because of their political beliefs or rumors about their political leanings. It is known that at this time, Walt Disney did actually assist the FBI in its investigations of communist threats in Hollywood. In October 1947, Disney did testify in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee, a committee that investigated alleged instances of communism in the United States, after the Hollywood Reporter released a list of communist sympathizers in the film industry. Celebrities like Walt Disney and Ronald Reagan opened up the hearing by saying that the communist threat in Hollywood was a big one. Disney specifically testified about the employee strike at the animation studio after his resistance to join a union, which at the time was considered to be a red flag. So, was Walt Disney really an FBI informant? With so many of the official FBI documents redacted, it really brings up a lot of questions about this conspiracy. Mark Elliott's book does take a strong negative bias towards Walt Disney and makes some pretty extreme accusations, like that Walt Disney's body was actually cryogenically frozen. Oh, and that Walt was actually born in 1890 to a peasant woman in Spain. In fact, after the book's release, Walt's family made an official statement that denied the claims Elliott made in his book. They acknowledged that Walt was designated as a contact for the FBI, but his late wife Lillian Disney went on to say, "There's no evidence in the records that would even support or tend to suggest that Mr. Disney even knew of this designation." Along with this, former director of the FBI, William H. Webster, went on to say, Such records do not support the assertion by Elliot that Walt Disney was an informant for the FBI. And according to the documents still available on the FBI website, the FBI denied every single proposal Walt gave them to film the Mickey Mouse Club at the FBI headquarters. As for his strong anti-communism, we have to understand that post-World War II was a very different time in America. People really thought that Russian communists might drop nuclear bombs on us at any second. So the threat of communist spies in America was perceived as very real. Everybody was spying on everybody. Paranoia was very high, and the influence of McCarthyism was so strong that neighbors were spying on neighbors and wives were telling on husbands. Walt Disney was probably just doing his best to do what seemed to be the most patriotic thing at that time. I think it could be possible that he, like so many people in America at that time, was acting almost like an informant, just out of patriotism for our country. Walt Disney is still a beloved figure all around the world, but he's definitely not flawless. It's possible that he signed up with the FBI to inform, but never actually did anything. So while he may not have been perfect, Walt Disney has still made an enormous impact on the world with his innovations. Not necessarily his supposed secret spying for the government. It's a little hard to give this conspiracy a rating because it's a little true, but a little not true. But since it's the spirit of the show, I guess I'm gonna have to give the Walt Disney FBI informant conspiracy 2.5 cryogenically frozen Walt Disney heads out of 5. It's halfway, seems fair. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments, let me know what you thought of this conspiracy and if you agree or disagree with my debunking. If you guys have any conspiracies you'd like us to cover, you can email us right here. If we like it enough, maybe we'll feature it in a video. Make sure you guys join the Channel Friend Radio Network and check out our preview for next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.
Woo. Somebody could use a shave. They don't want you to know this. Come on, stay with me. Free right.
Yep. Texas is known for its big food, big hats, George Bush, and for being home to our favorite redneck family, the Hills, from the popular show King of the Hill. But it could also be home to some baby daddy drama. Is it possible that Hank Hill isn't actually Bobby's real father? If you're not familiar with King of the Hill, let me give you a little background on the show. King of the Hill was an adult animated show that aired from 1997 to 2010. It follows the life of propane salesman Hank Hill as he tries to handle the daily ordeals of living in Texas with his family. Some of Hank's best friends are exterminator Dale Gribble, mumbling Boom Howard, and his loser next door neighbor, Bill Dauterive. Now that you're all caught up, let's get into this. The theory we're covering today stems from the episode To Sirloin with Love, in which we learn that Hank and Peggy are having trouble conceiving due to Hank's fertility issues. The birth of their son Bobby is explained almost like a miracle, with Hank's single viable sperm managing to make it through. However, some conspirators are skeptical about this and postulate that Hank is outright sterile. These conspirators believe that Bill Dauterive, Hank's neighbor, is actually Bobby's biological father, hailing their proof from the episode Hank's on Board, in which Bill confesses to Hank that in a moment of weakness on a dark, rainy night, he slept with Peggy. After Bill confesses, Hank immediately shuts him down by saying,
"No, you didn't, Bill." I know.
This makes it seem like Bill and Hank are all too aware that Bill sleeping with Peggy is just something he wished had happened. But who knows? Maybe he agreed to cover up something he realized he probably shouldn't have admitted to. It's also not hard to believe that Bill would sleep with Peggy. He constantly professes his attraction to her, considering her the epitome of a desirable woman. His never-dying crush on her is sort of a running gag in the show. However, this is where it gets a little interesting. Most fans of the show would find it hard to find a reason or even evidence of the reverse. Like, why would Peggy ever sleep with Bill? But supporters of this theory point out that in the episode Luann Version 2.0, Peggy admitted that she'd premarital sex with another man prior to Hank. And you can probably assume the conclusion that these conspirators jumped to. Oh, and one last thing. Bill shares his top secret family recipe with Bobby in order to keep the family tradition alive. So why would he do that if Bobby wasn't in his family? Could Bill Dauterive really be Bobby's biological father? I don't know about you guys, but I definitely have a lot of questions. If Hank is actually 100% diagnosably sterile, where does he really think Bobby came from? And as for Bill stating that he had a moment of weakness with Peggy, the remainder of dialogue with Hank in that scene seems to really point to that being a lie. Likewise, the man that Peggy was having premarital sex with was revealed to be Wayne Trotter, who was questioning his sexuality. Wayne Trotter is not Bill. That we know for sure. On top of this, we know that Bill has feelings for Peggy. But throughout the show, she constantly reminds him that she finds him absolutely repulsive. Some do say that Bobby looks a lot like Bill. But Bobby also looks a lot like Hank's dad and Hank's brother, Good Hank. And finally, in the flashback episode, How to Fire a Rifle Without Really Trying, we see Hank as a kid shooting cans with his father, and he happens to look a lot like Bobby. I think the theory brings up a good argument, and while I still have some questions, most of the evidence seems to be wishful thinking on Bill's part. So on the plausibility meter, I'm going to give the King of the Hill conspiracy 2 propane and propane accessories out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments, let me know if you agree or disagree with my debunking of the King of the Hill conspiracy. If you guys have any conspiracies you'd like us to cover, please send it to us in an email or even make a video and we might feature it. Make sure you join the Channel Frederator Network and subscribe to Channel Frederator, and I'll see you guys next week.
No, yo me iba a arropar yo mismo, no, porque no se ensucie.
Dave, you've turned the hearts of many people. Like who? I'm sorry, I'm very high.
You know that white rapper Lil Dicky? He's growing right now. He's bubbling. His bad haircut.
Wait, white boy?
Exactly. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Ugh, I hate Mondays. And you know who else hates Mondays? Our favorite fat, orange, and lasagna-loving cat, Garfield. Garfield is living every lazy cat's dream, sitting at home all day with his owner John and dog Odie. But wait, what if this is actually just Garfield living a dream? What if his house, his owner, and everything else in Garfield's life is just a figment of his imagination? The first Garfield comic was introduced to the public in 1978. Garfield was a huge hit. He launched off the newspaper and into our hearts alongside John and Odie. However, 11 years later, a week before Halloween in 1989, newspaper readers were concerned by a strange and rather creepy Garfield comic. The comic showed Garfield wandering around an abandoned house with a for sale sign in the front yard. Unable to cope with the prospect of his happy life being false and the truth of being abandoned, he screams out, "I don't want to be alone," and is magically transported back into the loving arms of his owner, John. This comic sparked controversy that the whole Garfield compendium has just been a facade imagined by a slowly starving orange cat. At the end of the comic, author Jim Davis leaves the reader with an eerie message. He writes, "An imagination is a powerful tool. It can tint memories of the past or shade perceptions of the present, or paint a future so vivid that it can entice or terrify, all depending on how we conduct ourselves today." Okay. Fans of this conspiracy believe that Davis must have been inspired by an Italian short called Valse Triste. It's from the 1967 Italian film Allegro non troppo, made to copy Disney's Fantasia. The short in question follows the story of a cat wandering around the destroyed remains of his abandoned home while seeing visions of his family and a wonderful past life, until it was revealed to the audience that the cat was in fact a ghost the whole time. Sounds very familiar, don't you think? So is this feline that we've fallen in love with really just imagining everything due to his life of desolation? When you consider the Italian cartoon, everything does make more sense if you assume that Garfield has been imagining his whole life. Now, I've gotten along with cats, but I've never been able to understand them the way John does. People speculate that the reason John understands Garfield so well is that he's reacting to his body language and facial expressions. But there's really not much variation in Garfield's faces. But if John really is a figment of Garfield's imagination, of course he's going to know what's going on in Garfield's head. Kevin Skinner was mindlessly scouring the internet when he came upon this particular theory. And coincidentally, Kevin actually had a business meeting scheduled with Jim Davis later in that week. When Kevin went in, he knew he had to tell Davis about what he had found. The story goes that when he confronted him with this theory, Jim Davis just laughed about it. In the Garfield 20th Anniversary Collection, Davis actually goes into greater depth of how this script came to be. It says that during a writing session for Halloween week, he got the idea for a decidedly different series of strips. He wanted to scare people, and what do people fear most? Davis said, being alone. Davis was also quoted saying that this strip was not inspired by some cartoon. This refutes the idea that Davis was basing the idea for the strip off of Val's Triste, which admittedly makes it harder to draw the conclusion that Garfield's fate parallels the cat in the cartoon. It shifts their similarities more towards coincidence. And as for John's clear understanding of Garfield, it's a cartoon, people. Garfield takes place in a fictional world where cats can eat like an infinite amount of donuts and not get diabetes. So based on all this evidence, I'm gonna have to give the Garfield conspiracy 1 lasagna out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments, let me know what you thought of this weird and sad and cat-friendly conspiracy. If you guys have a conspiracy that you would like us to cover, email us or make a video and we might feature it. Make sure you guys subscribe to channel Frederator and join the Frederator Network, and I'll see you guys next week.
We want you to join the Channel Frederator Network. So as long as you're making animation, or if you're interested in animation, illustrations, deep painting, drawing, comic.
We are fighting a war 30 years in the future. We need you.
In 2012, Crack.com made a video about how all the Pixar movies are secretly... Are you ready, kids? What if your favorite...
I don't know about you guys, but for me, the mid-2000s were prime time for after-school cartoons. One of my favorites being Ed, Edd and Eddy. But what if all of the kids in the show were actually dead, and the cul-de-sac they lived on is purgatory? Ugh, creepy, right? So why could this actually make sense? Well, first of all, like any good cartoon, there are never any adults in the show. Actually, the only adult we've ever seen is Eddie's older brother, and if you remember that episode correctly, he was sort of a huge jerk. Yet he only shows up once, so it's possible that the kids could have been visiting him in hell. I mean, it all makes sense considering the kids already look like they're dead, too. Because, you know, I haven't seen too many kids with yellowish skin and blue tongues, but hey, what do I know? The Kanker sisters are the only ones that aren't dead. On the contrary, they're demons that are sent to torment the kids. The conspiracy also states the kids are from different time periods and they all died in different ways. For example, Ralph is from 1903 and he died in a farming accident. Eddie is from the Great Depression, and Jimmy died in the early 2000s from leukemia. Well, that's dark. The setting of Ed, Edd and Eddy is actually very hard to pinpoint. In some episodes, the kids are using typewriters, and others they're using computers. Not to mention that basically everything else is made of cardboard. Yet, they all seem to dress like mid-2000s kids. You know, like track jackets and backwards hats. While the different time periods part of the conspiracy is very interesting, it just wouldn't make sense for an Eastern European kid from the 1900s to be wearing jeans and a t-shirt in the afterlife. But I'm not one to judge, I guess. In fact, if I were to go back into any time period in fashion, I would just dress like Lizzie McGuire all the time. But that's beside the point. The Purgatory conspiracy is creepy enough that I actually totally dig it. But is it plausible? Well, there's not a lot that invalidates it, but there's also nothing that proves it. I really don't want to give it a 4, but I also make the rules here. So on the plausibility meter, I'm giving the Ed, Edd and Eddy conspiracy 3.75 jawbreakers out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracies. Tell me what you thought of this conspiracy in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to Channel Frederator and check out my channel too. Thanks so much for watching. Bye. I told myself I wasn't going to make this joke, but here I go anyway. So what if Disney's Aladdin took place in a whole new world? Oh god, I hit myself so much. But listen to this. What if Aladdin took place in the very distant future in a post-apocalyptic, semi-Arabic world? The conspiracy states that Aladdin can't take place in the early Middle East. This is because when Genie is released, he says he's been in the lamp for 10,000 years, and then later in the movie he says Aladdin's clothes are so 3rd century, meaning Aladdin would have to take place in 10,300 AD. Considering all the pop culture references Genie makes, this could make sense. The part of the theory that I don't really buy is where it states that the flying carpet and all the other magic in the film is just future technology. So let's talk about this. Here's the first fact about this film. It's a Disney movie. And a common theme in Disney movies, just in case you didn't know, is magic. The genie is magic. His phenomenal cosmic power allows him to exist in any time, meaning he's able to know who Groucho Marx and Jack Nicholson are while existing somewhere around the 8th to 16th century. So let this be the only time in the history of ever that a theory will be disproven with the hard facts of magic. Sorry folks, in cartoons, magic will always beat logic. So on the plausibility meter, I'm going to give the Aladdin conspiracy 1.5 talking parrot sidekicks out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracies. Make sure you subscribe to Channel Frederator and stick around for next time.
Piggy Bank sent me a gift.
And they must have sent one for me. Another one for me. So the influencer gets double the gifts. You're not.
It's 2014, and I'm still pretty pissed we don't have jetpacks or robot maids like America's favorite futuristic family, the Jetsons. The Jetsons live in the sky, but did you ever wonder what they lived above? Illustrator Andrew Klob created possibly one of my favorite things ever, cartoon conspiracy illustrations. Klob's piece features the conspiracy that the Jetsons actually live above the Flintstones. His theory is this: what if Orbit City is in the skies above bedrock and the Jetsons lived above the Flintstones? Klob says that in the not-too-distant future, the Flintstones choose to live below the Jetsons because they wish to live a simpler life. He states that both families existed at the same time because they use similar technology, they're just comprised of different materials. One chooses conveyor belts, the other chooses animal cruelty. However, Crack.com has a much darker opinion. They say, what if Bedrock was a post-apocalyptic future wasteland that's been bombed back to the Stone Age, and Orbit City is just a temporary home away from home while the Earth recovered? You know, because that worked so well in WALL-E. Klob says the reason for the Flintstones' funky-looking dinosaurs is a kind of genetic engineering that can only be achieved in the near future. Chris Hardwick actually talked about the same theory in his Nerdist podcast. He says that the surviving animals get a fresh start on a radiated planet, and without the humans around, these animals would be free to evolve. However, the humans end up using them to replicate technology. So whether it's evolution or genetic engineering, a common theme here is that the humans are messing everything up. Oh wait, wrong theory. Now I know what you're all thinking. What about the 1987 TV movie, The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones? Elroy makes a time machine to send the family to the future, but they actually end up in bedrock. So what if, instead of traveling through time, they just teleported to the Earth's surface? Well, is it possible for these two TV families to exist in the same time? This conspiracy is surprisingly in-depth. The part that was most intriguing to me is that both of these shows aired during the height of the Cold War in the US. So it's possible that a nuclear war between the Soviets and the Americans is what created this prehistoric-looking wasteland that is Bedrock. There's also a lot that proves this. The Flintstones have contemporary-looking money. They drive, for lack of a better word, cars, watch TV, use record players, and they even celebrate Christmas. It just wouldn't make sense for a caveman to even know what a record player is, let alone use one. And the fact that they use contemporary forms of currency and celebrate a holiday that's only existed in Western culture for the past few centuries means that the Flintstones must have had some previous experience in modern times. Of course, there's nothing concrete in either show that proves this conspiracy. In fact, it's stated that the Jetsons specifically takes place in 2062. So on the plausibility meter, I give the Jetsons and Flintstones conspiracy 4 robot maids out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of this conspiracy. Make sure you subscribe to Channel Frederator to stay tuned for next week's episode, and check out my channel as well. Disclaimer, if you would like your childhood to remain somewhat unruined, I suggest turning off this video now. Brace yourselves. This conspiracy is a depressing one. We all remember Rugrats, right? The brightly colored cartoon about talking babies. Well, what if all the babies were just a figment of Angelica's imagination and she was suffering from schizophrenia? Still here? So for the sake of this conspiracy, all those lovable little babies, Yeah, they're all dead. Chucky and his mom died in childbirth, which is why Chaz is a nervous wreck all the time. Tommy was a stillborn, which is why Stu is constantly in the basement making toys for the son he never had. The DeVilles had an abortion. Angelica couldn't figure out whether the baby was going to be a boy or a girl, and instead created the twins. Oh, don't worry, it gets worse. And all grown up, Angelica was a bipolar schizophrenic who became addicted to various narcotics that would let her keep imagining her childhood friends. Angelica's dad remarried, and Angelica's real mom actually died of a heroin overdose. Angelica's schizophrenia is actually a result of just being a crack baby. If this giant dark-ass cloud has any silver lining, it's that Susie was Angelica's only real friend. Susie played along with Angelica's twisted imagination because she knew it made her happy. So could this all really be true? The conspiracy is a good explanation as to why Angelica is the only older kid who can communicate with the babies, except that she's not. Obviously, Susie can talk to the babies too, and some say this is just her playing along with Angelica's imagination. But are we all forgetting Rugrats in Paris, where Chucky learns his first word? So it's implied at the end of the series that Chucky begins to learn to talk. All in all, this conspiracy is depressing as hell, but it's also skipping over some major plot points. So on the plausibility meter, I give the Rugrats conspiracy 2.5 plastic screwdrivers out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of the Rugrats conspiracy. Make sure you subscribe to Channel Frederator to stay tuned for next week's episode, and check out my channel as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Do you feel as though you had to sacrifice anything to stay in dance? Everything.
The Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater is one of the most important contemporary dance companies in the world.
People were just, oh my God, they've never seen anything like it.
Choreographers start with an empty space, a body or two. We said, carve the space. I love creating something where there was nothing before. I was born in the Depression, 1931. Rural country, tough times.
After my episode about the frozen tangled of Little Mermaid conspiracy, so many of you so politely brought to my attention that I was incorrect. And that actually, when the King and Queen of Arendale's ship crashed, they didn't die somewhere between Norway and Germany, but instead washed up on the coast of Africa and raised Tarzan. I'm going to do this in the nicest and most organized way possible. Here are 3 reasons why this conspiracy is completely ridiculous. Number 1 is the most obvious, that Elsa and Anna's parents look nothing like Tarzan's parents. I mean, unless somehow Months at Sea turns you ginger, there's no resemblance. Number 2 is that these films take place 400 years apart. While it isn't specified exactly when Frozen takes place, we can assume it's around the Middle Ages based on the fashion and the technology. For these same reasons, as well as the novel the film is based off of, we know Tarzan takes place in the 19th century. Last but not least, a geography lesson. If we're following the original conspiracy and Elsa and Anna's parents shipwrecked somewhere on the North Sea, they would have to swim a hell of a long way to end up on the jungle coast of Africa. So I hope, once and for all, this settles it. Honestly, the only connection between these 2 movies is the shipwreck. And if we're going based on that, you know what? What if Jack never died on the Titanic and he swam all the way to Norway to become King of Arendelle? For the record, I'm being facetious. So, on the plausibility meter, if I can even bear to consider this plausible, I give the Frozen Tarzan theory 0 Olympic-level swimming parents out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments below, let me know if you agree with me or not. If you click on the left over here, you can get a sneak peek of next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe to Channel Frederator, and I'll see you next. This week on Cartoon Conspiracy, we're going to do something a little different. This week, we're going to be talking about Easter eggs. Animators love to hide subtle references in their work, and right now, I'm going to list every instance of A113 that I could find. In Toy Story, it's the license plate of Andy's mom's car. It appears on a box in A Bug's Life, a camera in Finding Nemo, a cell number in The Incredibles, and on various vehicles and cars. The courtroom number and up, in even more vehicles and cars too. It's this door in Monsters University. And A113 is even Roman numerals in Brave. But that's not all. A113 appears on a truck in Lilo and Stitch, and then again in The Iron Giant. A113 has actually found its way into several episodes of The Simpsons and American Dad. And I'm still not done. A113 shows up on Agent Hanaway's ring in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and it's Also the signal Tom Cruise's character uses to call in support. A113 even shows up twice in the Avengers. And last but not least, A113 shows up in Catching Fire. So what is A113? Well, A113 is a classroom. Let's go back to Valencia, California, 1979. In a classroom at California Institute of the Arts, future big names in animation, John Lasseter, Brad Bird, Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, Tim Burton, Henry Selick, just to name a few, were just students. CalArts, an art school founded by Walt Disney, was one of the first to offer a program in animation, taught firsthand by Disney legends. This small group of CalArts kids bonded over their student work in classroom A113 and then went on to revolutionize the animation world. So I guess A113 has become a way for these animation geniuses to mark their territory. However, A113 has expanded past just these CalArts alumni. The reason this Easter egg appears in films like The Avengers and Catching Fire is because Joss Whedon, director of The Avengers, was a writer on Toy Story, and Michael Arndt, screenwriter of Catching Fire, was a writer on Toy Story 3. Where will all this A113 madness end? Well, hopefully never. As long as these people are making movies and TV shows, we are bound to see A113 hidden somewhere on our screens. So be sure to keep your eyes peeled. If you happen to see A113 pop up somewhere that I didn't mention, let me know in the comments. And in the description below, I added some awesome videos and websites I found while doing my research for this video. And even some ridiculous conspiracies about what people thought A113 could have been. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. You can click over here to check out a preview for next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe to channel Frederator. Stay tuned for next week. Check out my channel as well. I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Tell someone you're a financial advisor and they think you only work with money. But my job is working with people. I give them personalized advice to help them make it through today's challenges and stay focused on tomorrow's goals. Ameriprise Financial.
Quite possibly one of the most unique and creative shows of my generation is Craig McCracken's Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. A show about a world just like ours, except our imaginary friends coexist with us. And when we grow out of them, they go live in a foster home run by Madame Foster. Those familiar with the show know that there are three main human characters: Madame Foster, Mac, and Frankie, Madame Foster's 22-year-old granddaughter who helps at the home. But what if Frankie was actually just an imaginary friend? This conspiracy was made popular by blogger and conspirator John Negroni, who initially found it on 9gag. Now just bear with me here because I can't believe I'm saying this. This conspiracy is not all crazy. Negroni's theory, along with 9gags, is that Frankie is actually just a younger version of Madame Foster, based on their similar clothing. The idea being that Madame Foster actually just imagined a younger version of herself to help her with the home when she gets to be too old. The argument being that the show never alludes to Frankie having her own imaginary friend, or even being able to create one. And why would a 22-year-old want to work at a foster home for imaginary creatures? Scratch that, never mind. That would actually be super awesome. Some flaws in this conspiracy lie in an episode where Frankie goes on a date and another where she shows her driver's license. Now, why would an imaginary friend go on a date or even need a driver's license? Unless she didn't know she was imaginary. This is due to evidence in the show that when these creatures are imagined, they're created with an understanding of their existence. But here's something else to think about. What if instead Madame Foster was Frankie's imaginary friend? It's possible, and a little grim, that Madame Foster died when Frankie was very young, and dealing with the loss of her grandmother caused Frankie to imagine a version of her grandmother to keep her company while she inherited her foster home. Well, could this be true? It's definitely an interesting way of looking at these characters, but these conspiracies rely solely on meaningless plot points, most likely purposely left out by the writers. And the second theory runs into a major flaw. It is explicitly stated in the show that Mr. Harriman is Madame Foster's imaginary friend. And I'm no expert in imaginary friend logic, but I'm pretty sure an imaginary friend can't then create their own imaginary friend. I'm sure there are some loopholes around this, like maybe Mr. Harriman was imagined before Madame Foster died. But still, can an imaginary friend own another imaginary friend? This is starting to get way too complicated. Let's just wrap it up. It's an interesting theory, but all in all, it just doesn't add up. So, on the plausibility meter, I give the Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends conspiracy 3 possibly imaginary grandmothers out of 5. There are other conspiracies about the show, like the one about Frankie instead being autistic found on Creepypasta, but I found those way less interesting, and I chose to do this one instead. However, if you're interested in reading that one, I posted a link down below in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. In the comments below, let me know if you agree with me or not. You can click over here to check out a preview for next week's episode. Make sure you subscribe to Channel Frederator, check out my channel as well, and thanks for watching. Bye!
With 6 grams of natural protein, there's nothing you and almonds can't do.
Okay, so this is Angel in real life, and this is me in real life. And because I don't have glasses, this is because I don't like trying myself with glasses that much. So, if you didn't notice, I drew myself a little bit chubbier than Angel because in real life, Angel is actually more skinnier than me. Shout out to Angel's channel. It's called Angel1214. Please subscribe to his channel. He needs more subscribers.
As if Tim Burton wasn't enough of a creepy yet mad genius already, what if he planned for Vincent, Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride, and Frankenweenie to all have one connection? This conspiracy states that all of Tim Burton's animated movies take place within the same universe. Specifically, that they're all about one boy and his dog. It all starts with Tim Burton's first stop-motion film, Vincent. Vincent is all about a disturbed little boy who tried to turn his dog, Abercrombie, into a zombie, which resulted in the dog being given away. Abercrombie is then adopted by Victor, star of the 2012 Frankenweenie film, who then later renames him Sparky. So let's move on to Frankenweenie. And this conspiracy refers to the 2012 animated Disney version of this film, not Tim Burton's 1984 live-action one. Anyway, I guess Victor's dog Sparky eventually dies for good and they bury him in a pet cemetery. Sparky becomes a spirit in an afterlife world called Halloween Town. He's then adopted by Jack Skellington, who renames him Zero. Supposedly, this connection to Sparky is why Zero's nose glows in the afterlife. This all leads to the second and final death of Sparky. Victor's parents buy him a new dog to help him get over the loss of Sparky, and Victor names the dog Scraps. When Scraps eventually dies, Victor loses it, runs away, and is eventually adopted by the Van Dorts. This all leads to the events of A Corpse Bride, where we see Scraps return just as a skeleton. Now let's take a look at all 3 dogs in question. You'll notice they're all about the same size with similar face structure. Okay, now back to the conspiracy. Victor then dies years later, and just like Zero, he becomes a spirit in another world. His previous experience in the underworld taught him that he needs to act and be scary, so he creates a new alias, Jack Skellington. Now, is this all true? Yeah, I don't think so. The biggest flaw in this conspiracy is a pretty big one. Corpse Bride is set in the late 1800s, while Frankenweenie takes place in the 1940s. So unless there's some unreleased sequel about Victor building a time machine, there's no way both Victors could be the same person. And another thing, Tim Burton didn't direct Nightmare Before Christmas. Burton came up with the story and preliminary sketches for Nightmare Before Christmas in 1982 while he was still at Disney, which is where he was until about 1984. He returned in 1990 after his success with Beetlejuice, Pee-wee, and Edward Scissorhands. Disney was finally excited to do Nightmare Before Christmas. However, Burton couldn't direct at the time because he was busy with Batman, so he gave the job to Henry Selick. It's a bit of a technicality, but since Tim Burton didn't direct Nightmare Before Christmas, it doesn't really fit in his universe, especially since Henry Selick made a lot of changes to the story. The reason all of the male leads in Tim Burton's films look the same is because they're all loosely based on Burton himself. The majority of Burton's films are based off of childhood stories or experiences he had growing up. Burton was very close with his dogs as a kid, so this is why every male character can be seen with a dog. And no, they're not necessarily all the same dog either. If we take a look at the series Family Dog, on which Burton was a character designer, we can gather that he just doesn't have a lot of variety when it comes to drawing dogs. While this is an interesting conspiracy based on the inaccurate timeline and interviews with Burton stating otherwise, I'm gonna have to give the Tim Burton conspiracy 1.5 Jack Skellingtons out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you agree with me or not, let me know in the comments below. If you're more interested in this conspiracy, you can check in the description below for some links I found while doing my research. If you click over here, you can get a preview for next week's episode, but make sure you subscribe to the channel Front Raider and stay tuned. Thanks for watching.
No, seatbelt. Was it a driving test?
This device facilitates your jump to and from the future war.
Your mission is to prevent our extinction. Do you want to see something really dangerous?
Literally, that's all I've been doing since I got here, but okay.
The Tomorrow War. Watch now. Rated PG-13.
Now, what could be even cuter about a raccoon-like creature who's the best friend of two little girls? Well, what if Neighbor Totoro was all just a metaphor for murder? Creepypasta forums and Crack.com articles have been abuzz with this particular conspiracy, that Studio Ghibli's Tonori no Totoro, or My Neighbor Totoro, is actually about the Sayama incident, and all of the friendly creatures in the film represent death. Warning, this is a little graphic, so if you'd like to skip ahead in the video a little bit, go ahead. The case occurred May 1st, 1963 in Sayama City, Saitama, Japan, where a man kidnapped and killed a 16-year-old girl. Now, before we get too in-depth with the conspiracy, you're going to have to excuse me on my pronunciation of some of these words. In the film, the oldest daughter's name is Satsuki, which is a traditional name for May in Japanese, and the youngest daughter's name is May, which in English obviously sounds like the month of May. Early in the film, the two sisters begin to see things, and in Japanese folklore, seeing things usually means you're going to die. The real-life model for the family's home is located in Sayama Hills, and the movie's location was inspired by Tokorozawa City, which happens to be next to Sayama City. Well, I guess this explains why the title of the film is My Neighbor Totoro. Now, this part gets a little creepy. The girl in the Sayama incident had an older sister who actually committed suicide after the loss of her little sister. However, before she died, it's rumored that the older sister began hallucinating a raccoon or cat-like ghost. So this could mean that Totoros are angels of death. Yay! The old woman in the film says that adults cannot see the Susuwatari, or mythical beasts. What isn't explained, though, is why she could see them when she was young, but Kanta, her grandson, doesn't seem to see them. So it's not necessary that all children can see the spirits. In the film, Satsuki asks the Totoros for help, and Catbus takes her to where May is, which, if we're following the theory, is the afterlife. What proves that? Catbus's sign translates to Gray Road. And some people think Catbus is a one-way trip to heaven, or maybe hell. And when May goes missing, she's seen crying at the feet of Jizo statues. In Japanese culture, Jizo is a protector of children. The spirit takes care of the souls of unborn children and those who die at a young age. So at the end of the movie, the girls return home with their mother, who's been in the hospital for the majority of the film. Or do they? In the final scene, none of the characters have shadows, almost like ghosts. So maybe the youngest daughter goes on missing, eventually dies, and the oldest daughter ultimately commits suicide. Just like the Sayama incident. Unfortunately, as it turns out, this conspiracy is nothing more than urban legend. While the events of the Sayama incident are true, its connection to My Neighbor Totoro is just rumor. And before you get too up in arms about trying to prove this, Studio Ghibli released a statement dispelling this rumor. They say the reason the girls don't have shadows is because the animators were too lazy, decided that shadows were unnecessary in that scene. Miyazaki also said that the girls in the film were inspired by his friend's daughters. It's also been said that the older sister in the Sayama incident never saw any rodent-type ghost. Here are also a couple other rebuttals to this conspiracy. Regarding the film's location, it's supposedly proven by the logo on a Sayama tea box in the back of one of the scenes. Sayama is a very popular tea in Japan, so it doesn't necessarily prove anything. Actually, if they're going to a hospital in the Hachikoku area, which is the area the movie is actually based on as far as the setting's appearance goes, then they couldn't possibly live in Sayama because we see the girls biking to the hospital and there's no way you can bike from Sayama to Hachikoku. And finally, a lyric in Cat Bus's song translates to, "Those who ride are cheerful ghosts." However, obake in Japanese doesn't mean ghost like it does in English. It doesn't mean dead person, but it is synonymous with yurei, which are dead people. Obake can be a forest spirit or any other kind of creature or monster as well. The Cat Bus is a bus for obake. Totoro is an obake, and I probably pronounced that horribly wrong. On that note, the fact that Cat Bus says Tomb Road literally doesn't mean anything. All in all, while this conspiracy runs into a lot of coincidences with the Sayama incident, Studio Ghibli did confirm it to be untrue. Technically, I should give this conspiracy a 0 out of 5, but I do want to give it some bonus points for being so thorough. So, on the plausibility meter, I give the Totoro conspiracy 2 raccoon cat-like ghost creature things out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this conspiracy. If you're interested in seeing some of the interviews and other articles I found while we're doing research for this, you can look in the description below. Click over here to check out a preview for next week's episode, and make sure you stay tuned. Break out those acid wash jeans and tie a hoodie around your waist. We're taking a trip back to the 90s to rediscover 2 educational cartoons. Did the kids from Magic School Bus turn into the Planeteers from Captain Planet? Take a look at this picture. How did we not see this before? So the way the 2 shows line up is this. Arnold becomes Wheeler. Carlos becomes Ma T. Dorothy Ann becomes Yinka. Wanda Lee becomes Guy. And Tim becomes Bob. As if, right? Well, the conspiracy I found is this. Gaia, spirit of the earth, kidnapped a bunch of kids, put them on an island where she brainwashed them into thinking they were in school and pretended to be their teacher, Miss Frizzle. But it really was an indoctrination camp where she could create the perfect pollution fighters by instilling a love of science and ecology into them at a young age. However, not all of the kids made the cut. Phoebe resisted the brainwashing, unable to forget her previous life and constantly making references to her old school. Janet, as per usual, was skeptical of Gaia's plan and convinced Ralphie to escape the island with her, only later to be driven mad by their memories. Eventually, they turned to a life of crime, becoming Hawkish Gridley and Dr. Blight respectively. Keisha's whereabouts, however, are unknown. When her class had matured sufficiently, Miss Frizzle / Gaia sent the kids out as eco-friendly sleeper agents until she needed them. Then, years later, she gave them their power rings and sent them out on a series of ecological adventures. So could these 2 90s after-school shows really have a connection? In the first episode of Captain Planet, you meet each of the Planeteers on their respective countries, and they make references to their past throughout the show. Both of these can be reasons why they don't just know each other from school. Of course, this is where the sleeper agent part of the conspiracy becomes very convenient. If Gaia really wanted to create eco-friendly superheroes in secret, she just might have erased their memories and changed their entire lives up until they were reunited as the Planeteers. As for the age differences between both of the shows, the conspiracy states that the mysterious time effects of Gaia's Island is what creates these discrepancies. But that sort of feels like a stretch. So let's break this down even further. Obviously, their appearances line up pretty well, but their personalities, in my opinion, not so much. Arnold, the cowardly nerd kid, is supposed to become Wheeler, the hothead. Pun intended, probably. Because, you know, fire and temper and... Anyway. And the argument that Ralph and Janet are supposed to become Earth-hating supervillains while Keisha goes missing. also seems a little bogus to me. It's as if we're just stretching the facts to fit the conspiracy. But now for some technical stuff. Captain Planet aired 4 years before the Magic School Bus. They were written by completely different people and initially aired on different networks. So theoretically, they can't be in the same universe. Odds are these two properties are just a sign of the times and nothing more. Captain Planet came first, and it found a lot of success with its cast of diverse characters. Perhaps the Magic School Bus producers were just trying to repackage the concept and duplicate the success. I mean, it does happen a lot in animation. The image is great, and it would make such a cool idea, but I just don't think it fits. But it might make some great fan fiction. I'm giving the Captain Planet Magic School Bus conspiracy 2 chameleons out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you agree or disagree with my debunking, please let me know in the comments below. If you click over here, you can get a super cool preview of next week's episode, but make sure you subscribe to Channel Frederator to stay tuned. Thanks for watching.
Calling all seafood lovers, this episode of At the Table is all about time-saving lunches. And I'm going to show you how to make a mahi-mahi sandwich. Here's the twist. It's going to be easy. So let's get started. Donuts. Wait, what? Unless you've been living under a rock for the past 25 years, you know America's longest-running sitcom family, The Simpsons, makes its living entertaining us with their idiotic antics. What if the Simpsons family was actually fooling us and they were all secretly geniuses? So get this, all of the Simpsons are geniuses, but only Lisa chooses to show it. This is because the rest of the family chooses happiness over intelligence. Grandpa may be senile, but in his flashbacks he's shown doing things that require a variety of skills, such as being a fighter pilot and an accomplished pianist. This suggests that he has an at least above average level of intelligence. I couldn't find the specifics, but I've heard it's been mentioned a couple times in the series that Marge actually went to college and received a degree, but she chose to be a stay-at-home mom. And Homer would have been intelligent if it wasn't for the crayon he shoved up his brain at a young age. This is actually proven in an episode in season 12 where Homer gets the crayon removed from his brain and he temporarily becomes a genius, doing things like proving God doesn't exist. But he puts it back in order to avoid ostracism from his family and his community. Witnessing this, Bart sees that his dad is actually happier being an idiot and makes a decision to live in ignorance of his intelligence at a much younger age and without having to alter his brain. However, Bart's intelligence leaks through on several occasions when it comes to his clever and original pranks. Bart torments Lisa because he feels bad for her and he wants her to make the same decision he made, because supposedly Lisa's intelligence is what makes her unhappy. Maggie, being a baby, has not been forced to make this decision yet, although she already appears to be as intelligent as the rest of her family. For example, one time she saved Homer from a crazed tow truck driver and has a scary level of expertise when it comes to firearms. So is it really possible this family has been hiding their smarts from the rest of the world? In season 9, Dr. Simpson explains something called the Simpsons gene. This is what causes baldness, laziness, and eventually idiocy in male Simpsons. However, the Simpson gene only affects the Y chromosome, so Maggie and Lisa are safe. The theory says that Bart made the conscious decision to live in ignorance because of his dad. But is it instead possible that he's slowly slipping into idiocy because of the Simpsons gene? The gene also doesn't affect every Simpson in the same way. Homer's half-brother Herb graduated from Harvard and started his own successful company. This brings us to the episode in season 12 where Homer temporarily becomes a genius. When the crayon is removed, Homer's IQ actually only goes up to 105, which, according to Google, is just average. While he is smarter than usual, people usually aren't considered gifted until they score higher than a 130. So even at his smartest, Homer is still definitely not a genius. However, it is shown that Homer's family and friends begin to ostracize him because of his newfound intelligence, and he chooses to stick the crayons back up his brain to become stupid and happy again. So genius is kind of a stretch for this family. I mean, the female Simpsons definitely tend to be more intelligent. So if we're going by the literal conspiracy that the Simpsons are all secretly geniuses, I'd have to give this conspiracy like a 1 out of 5, but that's no fun. While they're definitely not geniuses, I do believe there are some smarts the Simpsons might be hiding from us. So on that note, I give the Simpsons conspiracy 4 donuts out of 5. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. If you disagree with me on this conspiracy, eat my shorts. No, I'm just kidding. If you agree or disagree with me on this conspiracy, let me know in the comments below. If you click over here, you can get an awesome preview for next week's video. Make sure you subscribe to Channel Federator, and I will see you next time.
Grand Canyon University, a Christian university, is one of the largest universities in the country. Online students at GCU received over 100...
We all know Adventure Time. It's insanely popular and probably the most out there cartoon on television right now. Following the adventures of a human boy named Finn and his best friend, Jake the dog, Adventure Time can be described as anything from science fantasy to surreal humor, and most commonly, post-apocalyptic. It's no wonder why the show has sparked so many conspiracy theories, and I couldn't pick just one. So, here are my top 5 Adventure Time conspiracies. Number 5. Finn is in a coma. Finn is just a regular boy, and his only friend in the world is his dog, Jake. Already neglected by his family, after Jake dies, Finn attempts suicide, but instead ends up in a coma. However, in his comatose state, he's able to imagine a world where he can go on adventures with his best friend, Jake, forever. This is my least favorite conspiracy because, well, first of all, it's super sad. And second of all, it just doesn't fit in that well with the show. Finn doesn't know or remember anything from his past life in the real world because Jake's parents found him abandoned as a baby. So for this conspiracy to make sense, Finn would have to have been in a coma since he was very young. But how would a baby know about nukes, demons, the fourth dimension, Earth's core, comets, Abe Lincoln, vampires? You get the idea. Adventure Time has a very complex plot and deals with some heavy emotions. Stuff that a very little kid probably wouldn't dream of. Number 4. The stories of Adventure Time are actually just Finn and his dad's role-playing game. Jake is really Finn's dad, and the show is actually just a Dungeons & Dragons-like game that he runs to hang out with his son. Jake creates the villains and the challenges to test Finn's moral code and teach him life lessons. In an interview, creator Pendleton Ward said he grew up playing Dungeons & Dragons, and writing Adventure Time feels like he's playing D&D with the characters. And watching the show, you can tell that it's heavily inspired by this role-playing game. For example, the Enchiridion looks pretty similar to the Dungeons & Dragons player handbook. So while the plausibility of this conspiracy in the context of the show's plot is probably unlikely, it's still an adorable idea. Number 3, Adventure Time and the Misadventures of Flapjack are in the same universe. The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack was a show that aired on Cartoon Network until 2010. And it's where Pendleton Ward had one of his first jobs as a writer and a storyboard artist. Flapjack's Ducktown, Stormwalk Harbor, could have been built after the Mushroom War, mentioned in Adventure Time. The events of both shows are happening on the same timeline, which could explain some cracks within the show's side stories. The Candied Island they saw in Flapjack was actually just Candy Kingdom. Peppermint Larry has been to Candy Kingdom and possibly used Princess Bubblegum as sort of a muse for his candy wife. Honestly, I couldn't find a lot that proved or disproved this conspiracy. It's possible that Penn's work on Flapjack inspired some elements in Adventure Time, and the reason these two shows never collided could be due to Finn's fear of the ocean. But also, Candied Island didn't look too much like Candy Kingdom. So really, this conspiracy isn't necessarily possible or impossible. Number 2. Simon Petrikoff's bedtime stories. The Land of Ooo and the Adventures of Finn and Jake are really just bedtime stories Simon Petrikoff tells to a young Marceline. The format of an Adventure Time episode is similar to that of a children's story, and that they usually involve learning some kind of lesson. Simon creates the character of the powerful vampire queen, along with an alternate reality to build the confidence of the young, orphaned Marceline. In this flashback, we see Simon kissing a young Marceline, and in his backpack, we see several books. Could these be the stories he's telling her? We have also seen the book Ice King writes about Fiona and Cake, so this proves that he is a writer and a storyteller. It's a sweet idea, but if this conspiracy was true and Simon was narrating every single episode of Adventure Time to a young Marceline, why does the Ice King appear so often? And finally, number 1, the conspiracy of the Great Mushroom War. This is by far the most plausible Adventure Time conspiracy. What could be the explanation for all these strange-looking characters and bizarre landscapes, besides the fact that it's a cartoon? Try nuclear radiation. The Great Mushroom War, referenced throughout the series, is actually a nuclear war that caused serious mutation. There are a lot of heavy hints in the show that allude to a great nuclear explosion. So here's everything we know about the Great Mushroom War so far. 1,000 years ago, there was a terrible war, and Simon and Marceline were the only ones left. Simon was saved by the bombs, which Marceline said bathed the land in mutagenic horror by a cursed crown that slowly turned him into the Ice King. After hundreds of years, the Land of Ooo came into existence. but this was only in one universe. In the episode Spin the Human and Jake the Dog, we see an alternate universe where Simon sacrificed his life to stop a bomb. When Simon died, his crown covered the world in ice. But in this universe, we can see that the Earth is whole, as opposed to Land of Ooze universe where there's a huge chunk missing. So we can assume this is because of a nuclear explosion. We can also see nuclear bombshells at the beginning of the opening credits. This conspiracy is basically true. It's just never been admitted in the show, but nothing gets past us conspirators. Now these were just a few of the many Adventure Time conspiracies. If you have a favorite conspiracy that I didn't cover today, let me know in the comments below. And in the meantime, keep conspirating. Thank you guys so much for checking out this episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. As always, if there's a conspiracy you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to Channel Frederator and stay tuned for next week for an all-new episode. This has been our most requested conspiracy yet. In fact, the show is so jam-packed with conspiracies, I had to bring in Chad from Loontoons for some backup. This is one of the most popular cartoons on TV right now, and the internet has taken quite a liking to it. It's Gravity Falls. I am a huge fan of the show. I even got the chance to attend a panel as a part of LA Film Fest to hear creator Alex Hirsch and voices of Dipper and Mabel, Jason Ritter, and Christian Shaw talk about the show. So not about to pick favorites here, but this is a conspiracy I wanted to do for a very, very long time. If you've never heard of Gravity Falls, here's the lowdown. Twins Dipper and Mabel are forced to spend the summer in Gravity Falls, Oregon, working at their Grunkle Stan's tourist trap, the Mystery Shack. At first, Gravity Falls just seems like a quirky little town in the middle of nowhere, but there's definitely more than meets the eye. Not only is it filled with creepy creatures, strange magic, and some bizarre townfolk, signs of the show allude that there's something even bigger happening in Gravity Falls. Many of the mysteries in this town lie within hidden symbols throughout the show. Symbols that in most cases refer to real-life conspiracies.
Oh, hi, and thanks for having me, Emily. It's great to be here. Now, what do all of these hidden symbols actually mean?
Now, before we begin, heed this warning. If you haven't seen Gravity Falls, there will be some light spoilers in this video. If you would like to remain completely unspoiled, I recommend turning off this video now, watching all of season 1, and then coming back. Go on, I'll give you a second. Are they still here? Okay, here we go. From Mayan calendars to cryptic writing, spooky souvenirs, and possibly satanic goats, Gravity Falls is filled with real-world secret symbols and signs. The biggest by far, however, is the all-seeing eye, or the Eye of Providence. And Chad